What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, I'm going to discuss 8 players that I'm likely to avoid for game week 1. I'll discuss the reasons why and also come up with some alternatives instead. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and don't forget to check out Fantasy Football Hub. Links are in the description below. There's 50% off at the moment, and if you sign up and don't win your mini league, you will get your money back. Terms and conditions apply for that. All the links you need in the description below. Otherwise, let's get into it. Alright, let's start with Toney, and whether or not you should ignore him for game week 1 probably depends on what type of FPL manager you are, because some people like to be very aggressive early on in the season with transfers, maybe even taking hits because of the fixtures, price changes and stuff like that, and other people like to be a bit more patient. And if you look at Brentford's fixtures, it's Palace at home game week 1, which is not that bad. Then it's Liverpool away game week 2, which is a bit tougher, although we've seen Toney score against tougher sides plenty of times. And then Southampton at home in game week 3. So for the first 3 game weeks, it's not too bad. But when you go to the first 5 games for Brentford, you also then include City away and Spurs away. So in their first 5 games, 3 of them are Liverpool, City and Spurs away. That just doesn't look that great on paper. Toney is fully capable of scoring in any of those games, but it's going to be a lot tougher. And when you look at his numbers from last year, 0.36 non-penalty XG is okay, but not brilliant. So there was a bit of a decline over previous seasons. In fact, if I have a quick look here, if I just bring up Toney, again, if you want to check out all the tools on Fantasy Football Hub, links in the description below. So this is his numbers for last season. And obviously there was a bit of a, it was a weird season for him. He was suspended for a lot of it. Then he came back, did well in the initial games, but then kind of petered off towards the end of the season. So it was a little bit of a weird season. We got to give him that. But if I go to the one before that, it was 0.4 non-penalty expected goals, and his expected assists were up as well. So it was a little bit of a decline last year. But then if you go back the season before that, it was 0.2 non-penalty expected goals. So he's never put up amazing numbers, I would say. But he is someone that's going to play 90 minutes every single game. Unless he gets transferred to another club where there's more competition, we know what we're going to get from Toney. So it's not that I think he's a terrible option. At 7.5 million, that's a pretty good price. And I could see myself owning him at some point. We've only got 3 forward spots. There's a lot of competition this season because of the pricing. I just think having to play those 3 away games in the first 5 probably means, for me at least, he's an avoid in game week 1. So next is Pedro Porro, 5.5 million defender for Spurs. Obviously plays right back, but very attacking. Definitely Spurs' most attacking defender. And at the time of recording, he's got 24.2% ownership. Now, I am recording quite early on in pre-season. There's still going to be some auto-pick teams around and stuff like that. But he is quite popular. But for me, I think, despite how attacking he is, the fixtures, again, would put me off. So first game of the season is Leicester away. Now, obviously, that's a newly promoted side. And a lot of the time, they are the teams that we would look to target. But I think Leicester are going to be a bit stronger than the teams that came up last season were. Everton at home, game week 2, not bad. So the first 2 games are not terrible, although you'd prefer to play Leicester at home than away. But then you run straight into Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, Brentford at home, and Man United away. No matter what you think about Man United, how poor they were overall last season, they do tend to find a way to score. So I would say, looking at the first 6 game weeks, at least 3, maybe even 4 of them are going to be difficult to get a clean sheet. And obviously he can go and get attacking returns on top of that, but that's really what it will feel like you're relying on in the early stages of the season. So I just don't think he's someone that I would initially go for. There's lots of talk about how the bonus point system has changed, and that's going to weaken players like Porro as well, because in the past, when you have conceded as an attacking defender, but you've created a lot of chances and got an attacking return, you've still been able to get bonus. But the way it's changed now, for every goal you concede, you're going to get -4 BPS. So that's going to affect the amount of bonus you can get. So that wouldn't massively put me off him necessarily, but it is just another thing which makes me think he's not quite so good for game week 1. And also, the way the pricing has been done, there's cheaper Spurs players. Like, you can get Van der Ven for 4.5. Now, he's nowhere near as attacking, right? Although he did get 3 goals last season, but Porro is the one you'd expect to get more regular returns. But if you got a point in the season where Spurs have got really good fixtures and you want to target them for clean sheets, you can save $1 million over Porro. So at that point, when Spurs have got a good run of fixtures, we'll obviously reassess and talk about it again. But it might be that we forego the attacking potential from Porro and just save the money instead, especially if you're trying to fit in all those big hitting attackers. So for me, first 2 fixtures are not so bad for Porro, but after that it gets a little bit dodgier, I would say. And so for that reason, I'd probably avoid him in game week 1. So every season I make this video, and every time there's a player included that's a little bit controversial that I'm not sure I should put in, but is close enough that I want to talk about them anyway. And this season, that is Ollie Watkins. Now, I will say straight away, the fixtures for Aston Villa are pretty good, and he was last season's highest scoring forward. So I can see why he's at 54.4% ownership. And if you wanted to include him, I wouldn't strongly argue against it. But I think there are reasons to consider avoiding him for game week 1. Now, just to quickly talk about the fixtures. West Ham away, first match. Not bad. They were poor defensively last season. David Moyes has gone now, so that might change for this coming season. But on paper, that looks like an all right match. Arsenal at home game week 2 is a lot tougher. But after that, Leicester away, Everton at home, Wolves at home, Ipswich away. So the fixtures are pretty good. He's running at 0.47 non-penalty expected goals per 90, which is pretty good. We know he's going to play every single game, and he always plays 90 minutes as well. So from that regard, he looks good. The reasons that I would think about avoiding him, he's 9 million, so he's the second most expensive forward behind Erling Haaland. And for good reason, right? He did put up a lot of points last year, but I just don't think he can necessarily replicate that. Like if we look at how many, let me just bring him up here, how many goals he scored, it was 19. Now I think he can definitely get pretty close to that, but he got 18 assists, and I'm just not sure he can do that again. Like if you look at the numbers, he ran at 0.11 expected assists per 90 last year, but his actual assists were 0.5 per 90 minutes. So an assist every other 90 minutes he played. That's not going to happen again. There was a lot of fantasy assists in there. So I would expect his total points to come down. Now, that doesn't make him a terrible option. He's always going to play. He's going to get you 90 minutes. He is a big goal threat, and the fixtures are good. But I just think for 9 million, you can probably spend that money a little bit better. Like just maybe even go down to like a 7.5 or even an Isak at 8.5 who's got good fixtures and will take penalties too. Could be a better option. Now, on the penalty situation for Aston Villa, Douglas Luiz took them last year, and obviously he's not there anymore. A lot of people think that Watkins will get them, and it could happen. I wouldn't completely rule it out, but his record is not that great. If he wanted to take penalties, he already would be. And some people are saying that John McGinn was second in line last year. Tielemans has got a good record. There's no guarantee that Watkins will get them. If we find out during pre-season that he has them, then suddenly I think he's a really good option. I'd probably want to include him. But I think with the assist thing and no penalties and 9 million, I just think there's going to be better ways to spend that money. And it's not like he's not going to score points. Of course he will. I just think you might be able to spread your funds a little bit better. This will definitely be the player that comes back to bite me. And I'm not saying for sure I will 100% avoid him, but I don't know. I just think there's probably better options you can go for in that forward line. Plus, you've only got 3 spots, so it's always quite tricky to nail down the best route. I'm just not sure Watkins is going to be a part of that for game week 1. And also, if he doesn't do great against West Ham away, people are going to see Arsenal and maybe start to panic a little bit, especially if other forwards are doing well. I don't know. He's great. I think I might avoid him for game week 1. All right, let's talk about Aït-Nouri at Wolves next. Now, this is a player that at some point this season I really want to own, because when we saw all the price reveals coming out, I expected him to be 5 million because of his attacking potential, but he's only 4.5. So at some point, that's going to be a bargain. 0.12 expected goals per 90, 0.07 expected assists. The potential for attacking returns is definitely there, but the fixtures for clean sheets are definitely not. Wolves opening 6 games are pretty brutal. It's Arsenal away, Chelsea at home, Forest away, Newcastle at home, Villa away, and Liverpool at home. The only team there you could maybe see not scoring is Forest, but even that game is away. So with 4.5 million defenders, because obviously we've got to have a bench as well, sometimes it's not a bad decision to kind of put someone on there that you don't want to play for the first couple of games, but then you want them to come in later on. But in Aït-Nouri's case, you're waiting until beyond game week 60, you're probably going to want to use him. And in fact, I think Wolves fixtures just don't get good. Yeah, even after that, right? Even after the Liverpool game, it's Brentford away, City at home, Brighton away. The first good run of fixtures for Wolves starts in game week 10, where they got Palace, Southampton, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, West Ham, Ipswich, Leicester. That run looks really good. So maybe at that point, if you've got a spare transfer or you're wildcarding, he's looking good, he's playing regularly, quite attacking still, then you might want to look to put him in. I just think that's too far down the line to include him in your squad. There's far better 4.5 million defenders that have got good fixtures way earlier than Wolves do. So we've got another forward next, Jean-Philippe Mateta at Crystal Palace, who's 7.5 million. And I actually think for the amount of points he scored last year, that's probably a fair price. And I understand why FPL gave him that. And when he was first choice, especially under Glasner, he was excellent. If we have a quick look, it was 16 goals, 7 assists, 165 FPL points. So pretty decent. And that wouldn't be a bad return for 7.5 million this season either. I just have my doubts about whether or not he can replicate that. I think he will do well. I think Crystal Palace will continue to be decent under Glasner. But again, you look at those numbers, 0.36 non-penalty expected goals per 90. The actual goals, 0.63 per 90. And it was similar with the assist, 0.05 expected assists per 90, 0.28 actual assists. So I think the returns will come down and he will keep doing well. But I'm not sure he's going to do well enough to warrant spending 7.5 in game week 1. Like, the fixtures are actually not bad, right? Brentford away, West Ham at home, Chelsea away, Leicester at home are the first 4. You've got Man United at home in game week 5, who you would hope would improve defensively, but not necessarily. And then Everton away game week 6. But even if you wanted to target those fixtures, I feel like you've just got to go for Eze instead. He'll almost certainly be the penalty taker. He takes all set pieces. He's a midfielder, so you got the extra point for the goal and clean sheet points as well. And he's 0.5 less, like he's 7 million. And there's no reason you couldn't have Mateta and Eze. But I think if you're going for one, you're better off just using a midfield spot instead and just picking up Eze for less money. I could be wrong, and Mateta might continue to smash it. And he did do better in terms of overall points than Eze last year, but Eze was injured for quite a lot. So, I don't know. I don't mind Mateta, absolutely. I just think he's someone that I would avoid. And also, around that price point at 7.5, there's a lot of other options. Like, whoever's going to be first choice between Darwin and Gakpo is the same price. Nicholas Jackson's numbers were better at Chelsea last year. And after City in game week 1, their fixtures are good too. Even Ivan Toney, right? The numbers are similar, but he's got penalties. So, I don't know. Like, Mateta's fine. Again, he's one of those picks I wouldn't strongly argue against it. But I think there's probably better ways to fill your squad, essentially. So Kevin De Bruyne is a little bit like Ollie Watkins. I'm not 100% sure he should be included in this video, but he's close enough that I want to talk about him anyway. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to avoid him for game week 1. Now, he has had a price drop. He's 9.5 million. And over the last 10 seasons in FPL, that's only the second time that he's been priced under 10 million. So obviously there's pedigree there. We know that, right? He's a great player. He's had plenty of attacking returns in the past. And it's not a case that he's a terrible pick. If you want to go for him, you should. I just think in and around that price point, there's probably better options to go for. Now, in terms of City's fixtures, it's Chelsea away game week 1, which is not terrible, but not easy either. Obviously, Chelsea are going to be under Maresca. We're not quite sure how good defensively they're going to be, but it's not a fixture I would target either. But after that, Ipswich at home, West Ham away, Brentford at home looks a lot better. In game week 5, they do have to play Arsenal at home, and game week 6 is Newcastle away. So overall, first 6 games, I'd say there's 3 tough ones. But the 3 good ones all come pretty quickly. So again, not a bad option. In terms of the underlying numbers, 0.18 non-penalty expected goals. We know he likes to shoot. Shots on target now, you're going to get a little bit extra towards the bonus point system as well. And 0.51 expected assists. That's always the thing that swings me against De Bruyne to someone else. Because he is an absolute, creativity machine. He is going to get plenty of assists with Erling Haaland in the team. But other players have got higher goal threat and penalties as well for a similar price. Even at Man City, right, you could maybe even consider Foden instead. Now, obviously, Foden's been away a little bit longer at the Euros, so De Bruyne is going to come back a bit sooner, maybe be a bit fresher. But I bet now, and I haven't actually double-checked this, the numbers... So, for De Bruyne, his expected goal involvement in total is, 0.69, but heavily skewed towards assists. For Foden... it's 0.54, so a little bit lower, but he's much more likely to go and get you a goal. And neither of those players have penalties. So, I don't know, just for 9.5 million, the same price, I just can't get behind it. I feel like I'd prefer, if I was going for a Man City midfielder, I'd prefer just to go for Foden instead. And if we then look at, the other players from other clubs, Saka is 10 million. So for, I don't know why that's showing up weird like that. But Saka for 10 million... you've got similar underlying numbers, a little bit more goal threat, but he's also on penalties as well. Cole Palmer is 1 million more. We know he's got penalties too. Like, I just can't see me paying 9.5. Even if I didn't want to go for those players that are more expensive, I'd probably rather spend just less money. Like even like Bruno Fernandes for 1 million less. I've just talked about Eze for 7 million. Obviously, you've got to fill those midfield spots up. So there's plenty of players to look at. But for me, I just think Kevin De Bruyne is probably an avoid for game week 1 because there's cheaper players that are pretty good. And there's players that are a little bit more expensive that I think with the penalties, it's just that added bonus. And I know I talk about penalties a lot. And look, it could be for the first 6 game weeks those players don't get any. And suddenly De Bruyne looks a little bit better. And when he does get an attack and return, he's very good for bonus as well. I just think because he's so heavily focused to assists and they're not worth as much as goals, there's just other players I prefer. So next we got Mark Guéhi, and I actually think that Crystal Palace defenders are worth thinking about because last season for expected goals conceded, they were in the top 5 best teams. Now I don't necessarily think they're a top 5 defence, but they're probably not far off. And when they've got good fixtures, there is a good chance for clean sheets. And they've got Brentford away game week 1. Wouldn't be the end of the world if you had to play a Crystal Palace defender in that match. West Ham at home game week 2. And then Leicester at home game week 4. So I mentioned with Aït-Nouri, sometimes with cheap defenders at 4.5 million, you can bench them for the tougher games like Chelsea away in game week 3 and then just play them in some of those early fixtures. Just have them on the bench ready to come on. So Guéhi's not a bad option, but for that price, you can literally get Anderson for Crystal Palace as well, who's got more attacking threat. There's not a huge amount in it, but you might as well get the better option when they're the same price. And if you wanted to go for the most attacking defender in that team, it's probably Munoz, who does cost 5 million, so I get it, he's more expensive. But if you want the best option from Crystal Palace, it's him. So either you're going for Munoz and paying the money, or you're going for 4.5 million and just getting Anderson instead. So Guéhi's a good pick, and I see why he's got 10.7% ownership, but I think you can do better at Crystal Palace themselves. So next it's Senesi at Bournemouth, who's been given a £5 million price tag. And I kind of understand why FPL did that, because if you look at the attack and returns last year, he got 4 goals, 5 assists, which is pretty nice. But the season before, where he played 200 more minutes, he only got 2 goals. So can he replicate 9 attack and returns this season? Probably not. And also it just doesn't feel great spending 5 million on a Bournemouth defender when you can get Zabani for 4.5, who's not as attacking, I understand that. But if you're going to target Bournemouth, you probably want to go as cheap as possible. It's not like they're a terrible defence or anything like that. But 5 million, when you just, I don't know, when you say it out loud, it just doesn't sound right. And also, by the way, for game week 1, the fixtures are just terrible. Forest away, Newcastle at home, Everton away, Chelsea at home, Liverpool away. That's the first 5 games. I don't really see any clean sheets there necessarily. And so you would have to get attack and returns. And I'm just not sure he's going to get enough to warrant spending 5 million in game week 1. Like, I'd rather just go for Munoz from Palace instead. So Senesi is an avoid for me. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more content, not only during pre-season, but during this season itself as well. And don't forget to check out Fantasy Football Hub. Links in the description below, 50% off at the moment. Otherwise, I will catch you again tomorrow.